Alright, I'm working on this Bobcat 742 skid steer today, and the temperature gauge doesn't work. This Bobcat has this electronic temperature gauge here, and it never moves. It's just in that position the entire time. Alright, so having a temperature gauge is an extremely important thing. Usually if the temperature gauge isn't working on something, I'll make sure to fix it right away, because there's a number of things that could make something overheat, and if you don't know what's happening, that could ruin an engine. So if your temperature gauge isn't working, it should be fixed. Alright, so most of the time when I fix a temperature gauge in something, I'll just grab one of these from the auto parts store and install it. These are extremely easy to do because you don't have to hook it up to power or anything. All you do is you mount the gauge, and then you route this to where the temperature gauge sensor is on the engine, and it's usually right near the thermostat housing. I've installed probably a dozen of these or more, over the years, and I've never had one stop working. And every time I've done it, the fitting has always been included. It's, you'd think it'd be harder to do, but even foreign cars, American cars, old stuff, new stuff, usually it's one of these threads. So these are great. But in this case, I was going to do that, but I don't think this wire is going to be long enough, especially the way the cab tips up on this thing. So I think it's just going to be easier to fix the electric temperature gauge that's already in here. So let me explain how to do that. Alright, so I just unbolted this. This was held on with some 1/2-inch bolts in the front. That way I can get to the wires in the back of the gauges. The ignition switch on. Remove these wires out of the way. Alright, so this is the temperature gauge right here. So one of these should have power. Alright, that one there has got power. One of them should be ground. Alright, there's our ground. And another one should probably light up as ground. Alright, so one of these is an actual ground. And one of these goes to the temperature gauge itself. So I guess let me just look at the color of the wire. That's probably an easy. So we got a purple with a white stripe, and we got a black. Well, I bet you that black is the ground, but let me go look at the temperature gauge itself. Alright, so I just looked at the gauge. It's the gauge, and it's got a purple wire with a white stripe. So this wire goes right to the temperature sensor by the thermostat housing. And that's how it should be in almost any vehicle, unless it's some new computer-controlled piece of garbage. So one of three things is probably bad here. We either have a bad gauge, maybe this wire broke going to the temperature sensor, or the temperature sensor itself is bad. I've already confirmed that we have power and ground at the temperature gauge. So this temperature gauge is really easy to test. If I ground out this purple wire with the white stripe, the wire going to the temperature sensor, and I can do it right with this power probe by hitting ground, that temperature gauge should probably go full hot. So let's see. Well, it makes it move a drop, but that should be going all the way to hot right now. So I guess that has to be a bad gauge. Let me try switching that gauge out. Alright, so I just got the new gauge assembly. So let's see. Alright, so there it is there. It's good. It looks the same as the other one. Alright, so let's get this swapped out. Alright, well that's good. That's all hooked up. So the other thing I want to change too is this hour meter. I don't know if I did this. I thought this was working, but either way, one of the tabs broke off of it. And the whole thing is like melted. See, it's like all melted here, and the front's like melted, so I don't know. Here, I got this new one, and I've had better luck with the digital ones than this type. I mean, I've bought a few of these new, and then they immediately fill up with like water and just stop working. And even the companies were claiming them to be waterproof, so I don't know if someone wants to recommend the best hour gauge, but geez, this thing, it's so melted, it won't fit through the hole anymore. There it goes. That's how you get it out. Alright, that fit nice. So now I just gotta hook it up. This spade connector still has that broken terminal in there. See if I can get it. Alright, so I think I got it all out of there. So I'm gonna put some thermal grease on, or electrical grease in both of these to keep them from corroding up again. I wonder if there's a positive and a negative on this. Probably not. Well, think it matters? Doesn't say. I'm just gonna hook it up. Let's turn on the key and see if that hour gauge is working. And nothing. It's got power. No ground. What is that? Is this it? Wait, which ones do I have hooked up? Alright, well this one's keyed power. Wait. Oh, that's power. Oh, that's power all the time, huh? The hell? How was this even working? And this is apparently nothing. Alright, hang on. Alright, well that was the one that was hooked to it, and that seems to have power all the time. I thought this one was hooked to it too, and that has neither power nor ground. And this one has no power or ground either. So there's a ground. Alright. I don't know how that was working, if it was, but the volt gauge works. See, there's power, no power, and it's keyed. I'm just gonna borrow power from that. Alright, so I'm gonna use this ground. So if I put power to this. Alright, so I'm using that mystery ground, whatever that was. And now with the power probe, I can power the other terminal. Alright, powered. And the hour gauge is working. Okay. So which one of these is, Alright, so with the key on. Alright, so there's power there. Wait, hang on. Okay, with the key on, there's power there. And it goes off when I turn off the ignition. Alright, so I gotta take power from this here and send it to right there. Alright, I just found this wire. I was gonna go make one, but that's pretty much perfect. So I'll plug that in. Right there. Alright, so let's try it now. So, ignition on, and I have power to the volt gauge. Sweet. Alright, I'm going to put this all back together because, if this doesn't work, the problem isn't here. The only other problem that there could be would be with the temperature sensor itself. And I even bought a new one just in case because it was cheap. But to prove that this works, so I've got ground, I've got power, and this terminal here goes straight to the temperature sensor on the motor. And this diagnosing process for doing this temperature gauge is actually the same for a fuel gauge or an oil pressure gauge or pretty much any of those one-wire gauges. Alright, so I'm going to put this back together now. And I know a lot of people, I don't know if that old hour gauge was working or not. Being that it was so melted, it probably wasn't. But if I knew it was, I would write plus. Actually, I might do that anyway. I write plus once, whatever that said. I guess I gotta go back and watch this video. I think it was like 17 something. Which, maybe this machine has said, I don't know. You know, maybe. Alright, let's put this back on. Up in the green, it's not that far, but you know, it's really cold out right now, so that's probably accurate. You know, the only other thing that might be wrong with it would be the temperature sensor itself, which is actually pretty easy to change. But it definitely seems like it's working. I'll just finish cleaning this up. You know, I'm so used to running that track machine, and that thing, you know, it's turbocharged and diesel. It's got so much more power than this one, but you know, this one gets the job done, but just certainly not as fast. So I'll just finish cleaning up this little bit of debris from the fire here. I'll put these back, that way I can burn them, finish burning them the next fire. Videos on how to operate equipment, and I was planning on doing that, but I guess let me just throw in a little piece right here now. Alright, so in this skid steer, this is an older machine, but you got your two sticks. That's forward, reverse on the right side, and likewise here. And the further you push it, the faster you go. The bucket controls are all done with your feet, so this is my left heel to back, left foot forward, right foot back, right foot forward. And then the third function on this machine is this lever right here. That way and that way. Obviously I don't have anything hooked up to it, but if I did, that's how you'd control it. You know, there's more to it than that. I do plan on doing some videos like that, but I don't know. Not right now. Alright, that looks pretty good. Alright, I'm gonna put this away. It seems like it's fixed. Alright, so I've been running it 0.9 hours. So it looks like the temperature gauge is working. It's really cold out, so that's probably accurate. Alright, so that's good. That skid steer seems like it's fixed. And this spot looks pretty good. So next time I have some brush to burn, I can finish burning up those stumps.